Thank you so much for joining us here at Freedom Church Online. God is moving in incredible ways here, and it is because of the generosity of people just like you that we are able to carry out the vision to reach people far from God. So just go to freedomchurch.tv/giving and choose one of the many ways to give here at Freedom Church. Now, let's get ready to hear a life-changing message from God's Word.
Kicking off a brand new series today, but before we do, I hope that you guys are doing good today. I hope that you had a good weekend. I hope that your favorite team won. I hope that one day that my Mark Richt coached Miami Hurricanes will win a game again. I really do hope that it happens. I'm unsure that it will. And it is not making me happy. It is not God's plan for the Miami Hurricanes, what is happening right now. But this is a side note, nor did I mean to bring it up. And it has nothing to do with this message. But I saw all of you happy Georgia Bulldog fans out there. And it made me bitter and mad and angry. So, that being said, what is God's will for our life? It's a question that we hear all the time. Outside of relationships, people ask us to do a relationship series. I mean, at least once a week, somebody asks when we're doing the next relationship series. That's no exaggeration. But outside of that, the number one series request that we get and the number one question that I get, and if I'm honest, it's funny because even though I'm the one teaching the series, I ask myself this question all the time, and that is, what is God's plan for my life? What is God's plan, not only for the future 10 years from now, 20 years from now, not just that, but what is God's plan for my life today? What is God's plan for my life tomorrow? What decision do I need to make, and what is it that I need to do? Which direction is it that I should go? And these are questions that we're all asking. Usually when it comes to series, let me tell you how this works in my mind. Usually we're either doing a series that is based on questions that you are asking, or we do series based on questions that you should be asking, okay? And this is one of those series that falls into both of those categories. These are questions that you should be asking, but it's also a question that you are asking, which is my favorite kind of series because it is way easier for me to help you be fully engaged whenever I'm answering questions through God's Word that you're already asking. And that is what we're going to talk about over the course of the next 4 weeks. This is one of those series you need to be here every single week. If you do have to go on a trip or a vacation or you get sick or whatever, you need to watch online because every single week builds upon each other. It's going to be a lot of fun throughout the course of this series, and I hope that you're involved in every single one of them. And here's why I think it's so important that we ask the question, because we all have decisions to make. Every single one of us. Some of you have a decision about who you're going to date, and you're trying to figure it out. You're like, should I date this person or should I date that person? I was talking about this with some of our staff the other day because it was just an impromptu discussion that had really nothing to do with anything. But we were talking about how, because Devin and I have been married now for a long time, 18 years, because of that, like we missed the whole dating via the internet thing. I can't even wrap my mind around meeting somebody on farmersonly.com. Like that is so weird to me. And I just can't even imagine it, you know? And we were just saying how not only do you have to choose the right person based on a picture and stuff that they could totally be lying about online, right? Because, you know, everything you read on the internet is true. And you not only have to pick the right person, but you have to pick the right platform. Do you go to Tinder or do you go to like Christian Mingle? You know, which one are you going to go to? And because you don't want to go to Christian Mingle and find if you're a guy, some girl that wears, you know, I shouldn't say any of this, like burlap dresses that go all the way down to her feet. You don't want that. But then Tinder was designed as a hookup site, so you don't really want to go that direction either. That can go sideways real quick as well. And so you have those decisions that you got to make. Some of you're trying to decide what school you're going to go to, or whether you're going to go to school, because times are changing. It looks different now than it ever has before. For some of us, it's should we marry this person? Should we not marry this person? Should we stay married to this person? Should we try to have an upgrade? You know, what is it? You know, the questions that people ask are just, it's interesting because now most people ask questions online, not face-to-face. It's amazing the boldness that people have with the questions that they ask, stuff that I don't think pastors used to have to answer back in the day because I think people were afraid to ask it. And now, because of the internet, you think that we don't know who you are, and you will just ask whatever question you want. And they are hilarious at times. Maybe for you, it's about an occupation. You're trying to figure out, should I take this job or that job? If you take this job, it's going to move you to a new city, and you don't know anything about the churches there. You're going to get a $10,000 raise, but you might sacrifice what God's doing in your family because you don't know anything about the city where you're having the opportunity to potentially go to. And these are all big decisions. Sometimes it's about a purchase. I had people ask me before, they said, Pastor, this sounds so crazy that it doesn't even sound true. But I had a person say they were looking at two houses on the same road, same street. They were next door to each other. They were both for sale. And they knew that God wanted them to buy one of those houses. And they were really up in arms about which house God wanted them to buy. And they were perplexed. I mean, and y'all are looking at me like this is a normal question. It was this house or this house. They were the same price. They were the same size. They were on the same street in the same school district. One would take 1 millisecond longer to get to. It would add 1 millisecond to their commute. And they had been praying about it for weeks. Which house does God want me to buy? And I wanted to send them a thing and say, God does not care which house it is that you buy in that context. It's not like one is in Oklahoma and one is in Georgia. That can get a little bit more complicated. These houses were right next door. We're going to talk about all these subjects because these are decisions that some are big, some are small, some are silly, some are very, very important. And we want to make the right decision because of the fact that we know that the decisions that we make today determine the future that we live in tomorrow. So we know that our decisions are weighty, they matter. And as a result, we want to try to get them right because if you're like me, there's been decisions that you've made in the past that probably weren't the best decisions. You ever been in high school or college and one of your friends did something and then you said, hold my beer, watch this? You know, that can lead to challenges, right? Or depending on your background, hold my Pepsi, watch this, or hold my Coke, watch this, or hold my donut, watch this, or hold my potluck dinner, watch this, whatever the case may be. And then all of a sudden you do something that you can regret or something that leads down a road that you never really intended to travel. And here's the question we got to answer. In our decision-making process, that's what today's going to be about. In our decision-making process, as we're processing the day-to-day decisions that God desires for us to make, what is it that God really cares about? Because some of you were looking at me like I was crazy, and I did it on purpose. It was a ploy from the beginning. Some of you were looking at me like I was crazy. I don't know how you were watching online. I don't know your face that you were making, but those of you that were in the room, about half of the people, when I said God does not care which house you buy on the same street, some of you were almost saddened that God does not necessarily care whether you have a finished basement or not. And I want to show you why it is that I think that that's true in the context in which I described it. Because as we do, I think here's what today's going to do. And usually you're taught not to alleviate the pressure before you get going into your communication. I'm going to alleviate some of the pressure and let you know that by the end, you're going to walk out of here and you're going to feel like some of the weight of the world has been taken off your shoulders, and it's going to really help you. And so as a result, I hope that you will dive in with me. You will give this message a shot, allow God to speak into your heart, and if he does, and we will act upon it. Because last week we talked about the fact that sometimes God speaks into our heart. He sows seed into our lives, but then the enemy comes and steals it. And as a result, we don't act upon it. So my prayer all week has been that the seed of the word of God would land in your life. And before the enemy can take it from you, it would take root in your heart and in your spirit so that it can produce the crop that God desires to produce in your life. And so that's my desire. Here's what I want to do. There's going to be 2 points. I want you to either write them down or take a picture on your phone of the screen. Or some of you have really good memories that are far better than mine. I don't know that that's the whole room. There's probably a few that have the photographic type memory. You are blessed, I think. I've never had that, so I think you're blessed. I'm not really sure. It seems as if it would be a blessing. But if that's you, then just put it in your mind, but don't push it to the back. Keep it at the forefront. Because I think when it comes to the answer to the question, what does God really care about? The first thing we want to look at is the fact that what God really cares about is who before do. What God really cares about is who before do. Say who before do. Who before do. Did you know that the Bible never really talks about God's will for your career? Did you know this? That if you were to pray and say, God, should I be a businesswoman and start a business, or should I go and become the greatest plumber in the world? It's going to be difficult for you to find that anywhere in the Bible, the answer to that question. If you're a guy in the room and you ask the question, should I move to Kansas or should I move to Ackworth, Georgia? It's going to be very difficult for you to find in the Bible specific instructions that will cause you to go one way or the other. If I choose to be a painter or a plumber or a pastor, let's go all P's, painter, plumber, pastor. I can pray about all those things, and it's going to be very difficult. Do you understand? It's going to be very difficult for me to find that. You're not going to be able to point to a verse and say, God told me that I am to be a plumber. It's going to be very difficult for that to happen. Now, let me tell you what it is that he does care about. 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verse 3. God's will, you ready? God's will, here it is for you to be a plumber. No, it's not it. Maybe, but not necessarily. God's will is for you to be holy. Now, most of us don't think of ourselves as holy. I'm a pastor of a church and have been for 10 years. And my first gut reaction to that is, that's not good because I don't feel holy all the time because I don't always do the right thing, say the right thing, think the right thing, etc. God's will is for you to be holy. Holiness, for those of you that are followers of Jesus, this is something that maybe you haven't been taught. You probably should have been. I wish that you had been because I think it would help you tremendously. The moment you become a follower of Jesus, holiness is given to you. So when you become a follower of Jesus, watch this. For me, April the 11th of 1996, 16-year-old kid, I all of a sudden could walk around with my head high and say, I am holy. Now, everybody around me would be like, I don't know about all that. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if holy is the right word. But according to God's word, Jesus' holiness was given to me. And so when he says in this book of 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verse 3, God's will is for you to be holy. What that means is God's will is for you to live out who it is that you already are. Being a follower of Jesus is like going on a treasure hunt on your own property. You're finding out who God has already created you to be. You're finding out stuff that's already true about you. So when he talks about holiness, here's what he's saying. I want you to be set apart. I want you to live a life where you're not afraid to be different than everybody else. You have a different calling. You have a different destination. You live for a different kingdom than the kingdom that everybody else on this planet seems to be living for. And so my will for you is that you would become holy. So when we ask these questions all the time, what does God, and by we, I'm talking about me too. What does God want me to do? The better question is this: who does God want me to become? We are obsessed with the do, but Jesus is obsessed with the become. So I'm saying and asking, God, what do you want me to do tomorrow? What do you want me to do today? What do you want me to do a week from now, a month from now, a year from now? God, what do you want me to do? And he's saying, I want you to become more like me. And if you will become more like me, it will help you to understand that God is more concerned with who you are becoming than what it is that you are doing. And I'm going to stop here and just embrace the silence for a second because this is different than what most of us believe. God is more concerned with who you are becoming than what it is that you are doing. So I'll ask the question for myself. I'll use myself as an example. Is it God's will that I'm a pastor? That is secondary. God would be pleased with me whether I was a pastor or not. It's secondary. I could quit today and go be something else. And God's not going to just send lightning from heaven and take me out. That's secondary. That's not primary. Here's what's primary. Not that I'm a pastor, but what's primary is that I live my life in a way where I'm becoming more like Jesus every single day. So here's the point for me. I could preach a great message and then go home and be abusive to my family, and that is outside the realm of the will of God. God would rather me do anything else with integrity, anything else with integrity, than be a pastor without it. So do you see, being the pastor is secondary. What you do is secondary. The primary thing that God cares about, greater than whether you go to school or you don't go to school, whether you start a business or you go work for somebody who started a business, whether you move to Idaho or you move to Florida, the thing he cares about more than that is who is it that you are becoming. Why? Because it's about who before do. So whether you get married or not, be faithful to Jesus. Whether you date somebody or you don't, be faithful to Jesus. No matter what it is that you do, whether you stay in this job or you take another one, be faithful to Jesus. It's about who before do. Can you nod at me and let me know that you understand? It is about who more than it is about do. Because some of y'all are looking at me like I'm not communicating, and I need to know so that I know if I can move on or not. Because it's about more than this. There's more to it. I told you there was two. We're only at one, but I'll stay at one if I need to, because I want you to understand it's about who you are more than what you do. But isn't it crazy? In the world that we live in, it's all about what we do, and it doesn't matter who we are. Why do we get everything backwards? And we're asking questions that God doesn't necessarily care about. And the reason I think that it's true is because Satan knows that if he can keep us busy asking the wrong questions, we will not get busy asking the right ones. Maybe what we need to work on is who we are as people. And then from there, God can give us a little bit of insight, because we're asking this question about what do you want me to do in the future, and God's wanting you to get to what do you want me to become in the present. It is who before do. God's will is more about who you are than what you do. This should be good news, because it means that God cares more about you as a person than he does you as an occupation. Now, keep in mind, this is opposite from everybody else. Because when you meet somebody that you've never met, after you ask their name, what is the inevitable next question? I know, because every time somebody asks me when we're somewhere where they don't know who I am, it always shuts the conversation down because they immediately think that I'm weird. This has happened to me so many times that now Devin and I, we have an agreement. Anytime we go on vacation and we meet people, we tell them that I'm in the public relations business or something, because the moment we meet these friends and they find out, oh, what do you do? Oh, you're a pastor. Ha, see ya. And it's starting to hurt my feelings so much that we come up with fake occupations. And it's not because I'm embarrassed about Jesus, but I feel like I can impact these people's lives more if they don't know who I am or what it is that I do. You see? The good news for us is that Jesus is more concerned with who we are. And here's what he shows us. If we're becoming the right who, watch, you will choose the right do. When you're becoming the right who, you'll start choosing the right do. You ever think to yourself, why do I hear people email us this all the time. I feel like what I should do is just I'm going to do this. I am going to do this. I am going to put down all the answers to the most frequently asked questions, and I am just going to put cut and paste into some of the questions that I get asked all the time. And people will say, why do I always go for the wrong guy? Why do I always go for the wrong girl? Why do I always do this? The reason why is because you're more concerned about do than who. If you're more concerned about becoming the right who, increasingly as you move forward, you will choose the right do. Does this make sense? All right, so number one, who before do. Number two, why before what? God's will is more about who before do and why before what. I read a book about the will of God, and it messed me up so much because it was so counterintuitive to everything that I had previously thought. And as a result, I love the fact that I get to share this stuff with you because most of us, we just don't think about it in these terms. God's will is more about who before do, and it's also about why before what. Proverbs chapter 16, verse 2. This verse is tough, by the way. It says, you may think everything you do is right. I don't even know anybody that's like that. Do you think that everything you do is right? I hope that you don't. But nonetheless, apparently some people do. You may think everything that you do is right, but the Lord judges your motives. In other words, motives matter. Motives matter. That means that sometimes you can do the right thing for the wrong reasons. That's why some of us have such a problem saying no. We are addicted to pleasing people, and as a result, we put ourselves and our families in horrible circumstances, and we're doing things that we really don't want to do because we're trying to please people that we really possibly don't even like. You may think everything you do is right, but the Lord judges your motives. In other words, here's what I think the Lord's trying to say to you and to me. He says, it's hard for us to get to the right place when you start with the wrong motive. It's hard to get to the right place when you start with the wrong motive. In other words, you won't, let's see, how can I word it? You will not do right. You won't do the right what? Here we go, this is perfect. You won't do the right what if you're driven by the wrong why. Took me a minute to get that out because it's confusing. You will not do the right what if you're driven by the wrong why. Say you want to buy a car. There's nothing wrong with buying a car. I mean, we need a car. We live in a world where we need cars. We don't have very good public transportation in the city. And as a result, we got to have jobs and you got to have transportation in order to get one. So when it comes to buying a car, what's the why? Do you need to buy a car and spend the money because of the fact that you need transportation and something that's reliable to get you from point A to point B and then back from point B back to point A? Or is the why because of the fact that you're trying to make a statement that you can't afford? I knew nobody would say anything for that one. I just figured I'd throw it out. You ever bought a car that you thought would impress everybody else and you loved it for about 2 months, but then the payment thing started coming in and you're like, oh, it's not as awesome as I thought. My paid for car that at least went in the right direction to and fro, that thing was a little bit better because when it broke down, $200 is no big deal when you don't have a $500 car payment already. But isn't it funny how we'll buy cars, we'll buy houses, we'll make purchases. You think that you have everything that you need until you went to your friend's house. You ever done that? You're like, man, my house is awesome. Then you went to your friend's house and you're like, their house is awesomer. And the awesomer house, all of a sudden, one little dinner that you got invited to just cost you $40,000 in renovation fees. And then you're like, my house is awesome again. But then you went to another friend's house. You're like, dope. It's not good. And we laugh because we've all done this, but hopefully not. We haven't all done this with a house, even though I know some of us have. Maybe it's been with something smaller. And we spend money we don't have to impress people we don't like. We do it all the time. And the reason is because we're driven by the wrong why. Should I post this photo on Instagram? There's nothing wrong with Instagram. I'm on Instagram all the time. How can I get the most likes and the most comments? Girls are notorious for this because guys don't have as much probably to offer, but girls will the less they wear, or a particular way that they stand, they know will get a better reaction. Why are we doing that? But then we ask, why do I always attract the wrong people? Have you seen your Instagram account? I'm not trying to be funny, you understand? Because you're so much more valuable than that. But if you're not careful, you'll only attract the people who think your value is attached. So Paul answers this question. He says, what do you want me to do? He answers the what do you want me to do question perfectly. Colossians chapter 3, verse 17. And watch this. And whatever, say whatever. And whatever you do, whether in word or deed, do it all in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks to God the Father through him. Here's what Paul's saying. You'll see this over the course of the next 3 weeks as well, by the way. Whatever you do, serve Jesus right there. So are you a stay-at-home mom? Serve Jesus right where you are, in the midst of the Pampers and the poop. Serve Jesus right there. Hold your head high. Do your best. Don't compare yourself to everybody else, but still do your best. Don't listen to all these books that tell you to stay in your pajamas for weeks at a time and lay on the bed and say, woe is me, and the season will pass. Don't listen to that crap. That's a lot of people buying a lot of books like that right now in the Christian circles. Whatever you do, whether in word or deed, do it all for the glory of God. You a fry cook at McDonald's? Make the best dang fries that McDonald's has ever seen. Don't wait for the big opportunity. Big opportunities don't come if we're not faithful with the small opportunities. You can't get the promotion to cooking burgers if you don't do well when you're cooking the fries. And if you don't get the promotion to cooking the burgers, you can't get the promotion to being a manager. And if you don't get the promotion to being a manager because you didn't do well cooking the burgers, because you didn't do well cooking the fries, then you can't have your own franchise. And you say, well, I didn't get any of the breaks. Yeah, you did. You just screwed it up when you didn't do a good job on the fries because you thought that opportunity was beneath you. I didn't mean for that to sound so mean, but it's true. Why should God give us more if we're not faithful with what we have? Remember, we had 5 people in our church. I need you to understand, I try to tell the story enough that you know it, but I don't want to sound like I'm whining. I wish you knew the mental anguish that went through my head 10 years ago when we had 5 people in our church, and I was married to one of them, and 2 of them was on staff. Because part of me, here's what I thought. I don't need to work hard at preparing a message. There's only 4 people besides me. I don't need to work hard at preparing no message. There's 4 people here. There's so many other things I could do. But I felt like God was saying to me, he said, if you don't preach hard to 5, you'll never have 50. Then when we had 50, I remember thinking, I'm going to be honest with you, I remember thinking, all my friends who have larger churches, if I was preaching there, I'd be working hard at a message. And the Lord convicted me one time. He said, if you don't work hard now, you'll never stand on that stage. If you don't work hard with 50, God will never give you 500. I remember when we had 500, I still didn't even feel like a real church, even though we were in a small town. And in my mind, I wouldn't say it out loud because I knew that it was the wrong way to think, but in my mind, I'd be like, it's only 500 people. It's not that many people. I remember God vividly saying to me, if you're not faithful with 500, why should I bless you with more? When the eternal destination of the souls of people. That's why I hate it when people say that. They say, oh, I'm just a volunteer. You're not just to anything. You're not just a stay-at-home mom. You're not just a business owner. I don't care if your business is large or small, whether you're rich or poor. You're not just to anything. You don't just hang out back there and watch kids. It's not what you do. But if we're not faithful with the thing that we do right now, why would God ever give us any more to handle? God's will is more about who before do, and it's about why before what. The will of God is not just about a few big decisions. The will of God is about countless daily decisions of choosing to follow after Jesus every day. It's the small decisions in life. Becoming more like Jesus, which is somewhat silly because of the fact that we already are like Jesus. We just have to live out who it is that we actually are and stop reverting back to who we used to be if we're a follower of his. Whatever you do, say whatever you do. Whatever you do in word or deed, do it all in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks to God the Father through him. See, God's will is more who before do and why before what. I want my kids to know this. Lexi, London, Bryce, they're all at different stages of life. High school junior, 8th grade, and 4th grade. Different decisions to make. Dad, what do I do? Should I go to college? Should I go to this school or that school? Or should I not go to school? Should I do an internship? I mean, what should I do? As they get older, you know what I'm realizing? Honey, whatever you do, whether in word or deed, school or no school, internship or no internship, McDonald's or a corporation somewhere else, whatever you do it all for the glory of God. Whatever you do, doesn't matter. I'm going to love you either way. I'm more concerned with who they're becoming. That's why some of you is going to mess you up. I had this conversation with Lexi the other day. And we just kind of have this thing, as long as they get A's and B's, we don't pester them as long as we know they're doing the best they can. That's it. Do the best. If the best you can do is a C, I'm good with that. You want to know why? Because I like who my kids are. And I'm not judging my children based off of anybody else's standards for my children. I'm going to judge the fruit, not the watering schedule. That's why you can't just read a parenting book and think that their parenting style for their kid is going to work for you and your kid. It's different. And you know what so far about my 3? I like the fruit. I've got good kids. Whatever you do, do it all for the glory of God. Because when I get to the end of life, I don't know when it is. Maybe it's, who knows, man? With technology now, we might all die when we're like 120. 120. As long as I'm moving around and stuff, I'm cool with that. I don't want to be sitting in no bed for 25 years. That'd be less than awesome. But when I'm sitting there and I'm about to die and I got my friends and family surrounding me, we're not going to talk about accomplishments. We're not going to talk about the what. We're not going to talk about all that. We're not going to reminisce about achievements and accolades and church size. We're not even going to talk about all the good things that come with a growing church, lives changed. Oh, that's not even what we're going to talk about. What we're going to talk about in that day is who we are. We're going to talk about where we've been. We're going to reminisce about all that. Because when we get to the end of our life, isn't it funny that when we get to the end of our life, we know that it wasn't about the what? At the end of our life, we know it wasn't about the do, it was about the who. When we get to the end of our life, we know it wasn't about the what as much as it was about the why. I want to help us as a church realize that years before we get there so that we can enjoy the journey and understand that the destination is a mirage. Because if your whole life is consumed with what you do, if your whole life is consumed with what you make, or how successful you are. It'll never be enough. It'll never be enough. Because I lived that reality out for several years, even as the pastor of this church, thinking that happiness and joy would come from a certain size. And every time we got there, it's like the number changed. Every time you thought, oh, if I could just make X dollars a year, I'd just be happy. Isn't it funny how when you did, for those that have, isn't it funny how the next year the number shifted on you? It's like grasping the wind. You're like, I got it. Oh. No, I don't. The will of God for your life. It's about who before do. It's about why before what. And that's the example we got from Jesus, isn't it? I mean, think about what it is that Jesus did. He came to this earth to live, to die, and then to be risen from the dead. But imagine what must have been going on in his mind, because the people that he came to this earth for were the ones who crucified him. The people like you and I who Jesus came to this earth for were the ones who turned our backs and ran from him. The people like you and I who Jesus came to this earth to save were the ones who were embarrassed of it. How did he keep, I've asked myself this question many times, how did he keep laser focused on what it is that he came to do? He knew who he was. So he was less concerned about the do and he was more concerned about the who. He knew that he was Jesus, the Christ, the Son of the living God. And he knew why he came. And the reason that he came was to bring freedom and life and forgiveness to all of mankind. And so as a result, when the do got hard and the what became overwhelming, the who he was and the why he came enabled him to fulfill his mission in life. And the exact same thing is true for you. When you know who and you know why, and you're becoming more like Jesus every day, whatever you do, you will be right smack dab in the center of the will of God. And we're going to talk about in the next few weeks why some of us don't believe we're living in the will of God, because we face obstacles and trials. I would go so far as to say that if you're not facing obstacles and trials, you're not in the will of God. There is a predictable resistance that comes. I've heard people say, you're never safer than when you're in the center of God's will. That sounds good, but that is a blatant lie. Because sometimes the center of God's will get you stoned to death, like Stephen. It will get you crucified, like Jesus. But no matter what it is that happens, if you know the who and you know the why, whatever you do, whether in word or deed, becoming more like Jesus every day, you are in the center of God's will in the present. And like a lamp unto your feet and a light unto your path, he'll show you his will each step of the way. Dear Lord, I love you and I'm grateful for you. I pray for every person within the sound of my voice today. God, I pray that you would help us to understand the will of God for our lives. That it is about who before do, that it is about why before what. Thank you for modeling this for us through the person of Jesus so that we could do what it is you called us to do in the first place. God, give us courage, give us wisdom, give us strength. Help us to have a weight lifted off our shoulders right now, because we know that we can be in the center of the will of God. No matter what we do, whatever we do, whether in word or deed, we can do it all for the glory of God. And as a result, we will be in the center of God's will. Lord, maybe there's people that are here today that they've never said yes to Jesus, that they heard that story about how Jesus came to earth to live a perfect sinless life, to die a sacrificial death, how he came to be risen from the dead to bring life and hope and forgiveness and freedom to every single person on the planet. That includes every person that's here. If that's your greatest need today and you're within the sound of my voice, if you're here today and you want to experience that love and life and forgiveness and freedom that only Jesus can offer, then right where you are, I just want you to pray this simple prayer with me as I pray it out loud. Just say, Lord, I know I need you. And the best way I know how, I'm asking you to forgive me of my sins, make all things new, and help me to follow after you every day and every step from this day forward. Lord, that's my prayer. Thank you for changing me. With your head still bowed.
Thank you so much for tuning in. We are grateful to have you as part of our online family right here at Freedom Church. Now, if you are ready to take your next steps, I would love for you to do that. Go to freedomchurch.tv/next steps, and you will find all the information that you need. Also, if you are ready to begin giving right here at Freedom Church, you're ready to be obedient in that area, down in the description below, you can click the giving link, and when you do, it'll give you all the information that you need as well. In addition, while you're doing that, go ahead and click the subscribe button. That way you can stay up to date with everything going on with the Freedom Church YouTube channel. I love you guys. I hope you have an amazing week.